back to the Earth on Survival Guide, a podcast for all disciplines, paths, players, game masters, those with spirit, those without spirit. I am, of course, Dan. With me is Josh.
Hi, everybody.
And on today's podcast, we will be discussing all things pneumatological, which is, of course, the study of spirits, because Josh asked for this a while ago, because he had a whole big rant in mind, and so we're going to discuss everything to do with summoning and spirits. So we're going to combine stuff from the Player's Guide and the Game Master's Guide.
Yes.
So we expect some questions after this is all done.
Yes.
However, first things first, happy anniversary,
Happy
Josh.
anniversary.
We made it to a year.
Yes, this is
It
episode...
was 45 episodes to get there.
Yeah, episode 45 is this one. When we started off our show, we did every other week for the first, 3 months before we settled into a weekly schedule. So we, if we had done weekly, obviously we would hit episode 52 after 1 year, because 52 weeks in a year.
Yeah.
But we're doing it here at episode 45. Our first episode was released October 9th of 2019. This episode is scheduled to drop October 7th, so it is as close to the 1 year anniversary as possible. Thank you all for coming along this ride with us.
But this is a leap year, so we take that extra day out.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming along with us on this journey, and we hope to continue on for another year or more, as long as we can keep coming up with stuff to talk about. And there is a lot that we can talk about.
We're working on making all of it known.
Yeah, I want to toss out some numbers here real quickly, if you don't mind.
Please do. Please
so
do.
As of our recording, our metrics on our podcast hosts indicate that we have 12,771 total plays. This is the combined number of times that our podcast episodes have been streamed or downloaded across all listening platforms that we are on. Our estimated audience size, which is the average number of plays each episode gets within the first 30 days of release, is about 170. Okay. It fluctuates up and down. It tends to spike a little bit right when we release a new episode and then kind of drop down a little bit afterwards. But it's held pretty steadily, when the 160 to 180 number here for the past several months. So that's pretty steady.
Nice. All 170 of you.
And, most of our, when we factor in back plays and whatnot, our episodes all tend to end up in the figure of a couple of hundred plays. Obviously, our oldest episodes have the most plays. We've got a couple of episodes. Our introduction episode is pushing almost 600 listens just on its own. and so, so this is good. We've got, we get emails from people who are just discovering the show now and going back and listening to them. But yeah,
or people who've cycled through and are going through a second time.
Yeah. A lot of people, we've got a really solid core listenership of 70 to 80 to 90 people that listen to the show within the first day or two that it goes out. And then we just kind of get a decent kind of steady long tail. It's great. We're having a good time doing it. Clearly we've got, we're not huge. Obviously we're kind of a niche podcast, but that's fine. We've got folks that are along. We get some regular emails from folks and all of that is really cool. So happy anniversary. Thank you again to everyone for listening and sharing and coming along this journey with us.
Happy to fill the niche. Absolutely. So with that being said, let's get started.
Let's talk about spirits.
Yes. Feel free to email us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com, because we will be doing an email episode here probably pretty soon, because we just get emails once a month or two.
We get emails. And there may very well be questions that do not get covered as part of this that you might have when we're talking about spirits and summoning. And feel free to send those in.
Absolutely. Because we know you Spirits. So I looked at it as, let's talk about summoning, and then we can talk about the spirits you're going to summon. But I think your idea works better, which is let's talk about the spirits you can summon, and then how to get a hold of them
first.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about spirits first.
Yes.
I think they break down into what, 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So 5 different categories.
Yeah. So you've got elemental spirits, which are associated with obviously the elementalists, the 5 elements of Earth Dawn: earth, air, fire, water, and wood. So that is one category of spirits. There are the
ally spirits.
They're the ally spirits, which are associated with nethermancers, and these are generally seen as the spirits of deceased name givers, ghosts in a sense, but there are also other types of ally spirits that are not those, but are also under the purview of the nethermancer. Basically, if you want to take them in kind of Shadowrun terms, these are the spirits of man. These are the spirits that are associated with name givers and the things that they create and whatnot. You've got
ghost inspectors.
Introduced in Mystic Paths. You've got a new category of spirits that we have with the shaman, which are the beast spirits. These are sort of spirits of wild places and of animals, natural animals, wolves, bears, owls, that sort of thing. And so that's a new category that was introduced in Mystic Paths. I'm not going to get into them over much in this, but a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about here with spirits and summoning holds as equally true for them as it does for the other types. You've then got Invae, or insect spirits, which are spirits, but kind of a category on their own that are generally seen as negative and undesirable, because what they generally do is they come into our world and they possess people and look to build big hives and whatnot. And they are their own category. And then the sort of final category, which is kind of a catch-all,
tasked,
are tasked spirits. Basically, these are spirits that are brought about for a certain task, usually as the result of a spell or talent. Orbiting Spy, which we talked about in the Scout episode last week, for example, is a tasked spirit. Any of the spirits that come about as a result of the mantle spells for elementalists and nethermancers or shaman are all tasked spirits. And so you can, there are elementals and there are ally spirits and beast spirits that are tasked spirits, but basically when we're talking about summoning, there's a difference between sort of the other categories of spirits that I just went through and tasked spirits, which kind of operate under their own set of rules, basically specifically based on the talent or spell that is calling them into effect. General summoning has a much more flexible nature. So that's kind of the
overall look of spirits. So where do you want to start? Just alphabetically, because that's where they happen in the book. So I think ally spirits is not a bad place to start, because you play another Nethermancer.
I think,
we can start there.
I think generally speaking, before I even get into the different types of spirits where we can discuss like the different categories and subcategories of them.
Yeah, minutiae. Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to do with spirits in 4th edition, and I think we kind of succeeded in this, is to try and make spirits a little bit more than just a stat block that you can bring to bear in a situation.
Yeah. I'm trying to make them a little more accessible, I believe.
Spirits are one of the things, certainly was not really addressed particularly extensively in 1st edition, was how common spirits actually are, how much that the spirit-connected disciplines, elementalists and nethermancers, would potentially be interacting or dealing with them. It's not something that really was given any kind of advice or guidance. I like to think that while not common, spirits are not especially unusual. And you can and should, I think, absolutely think of ways that you can use spirits and different types of spirits in your game in much the same way that, like, to, again, kind of draw the Shadowrun parallel, that free spirits and those sorts of things can be brought to bear. That these can be these can be Game Master characters that have personalities and goals and objectives and may provide a source of adventure hooks or opposition or anything like that. And thinking of them as more than just the interaction of them as far as summoning and the summoning talent goes, to really make them a part of the setting.
Well, yeah,
and
because information
one of the
gathering
ways
as well.
One of the ways that we addressed that, in a sense, was in all of the examples of ally spirits that we created that are in the Game Master's Guide. You kind of have a few pages beforehand presenting some in-character setting material about spirits and some aspects of them. But then we get into stat blocks, and the ally spirits being the first ones. We have generic templates for here's how you create the stat block and the numbers for a spirit, but then we get examples. We get some specific spirits as examples, but we also get some spirit types that have mask-like modifiers that get placed on top of the base stat block to kind of change their theme and focus, like the guardian spirit or the bone spirit. And so the idea behind spirits, and some of this is taken as inspiration from Werewolf and Mage, the White Wolf games.
White Wolf games.
Particularly the New World of Darkness versions of them, Werewolf the Forsaken and Mage the Awakening, where there is a very animistic kind of approach to things. No, not animalistic, animistic, which is the idea that everything has a spirit, right? That there are spirits of...
that for the listeners.
What was that?
I was just making sure we clarified that for the listeners. It was not animalistic, It was animistic.
Yeah, not animalistic.
Heard you.
Animistic, which is to say the spiritual belief that things have spirits, that there are spirits of rocks and trees and, whatnot. But also drawing in some stuff from Shadowrun and the spirits of man and city spirits and things like that ally spirits kind of fill that role, and that they are spirits that would be potentially aligned with certain concepts and ideas and whatnot that they would be involved with. And so you would have, say, a guardian spirit that would be an ally spirit that would be summoned and brought to protect an individual, and so would have stats and powers that would be, associated with that goal.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that I want to encourage, and to see spirits be used as just another denizen and resident of the setting than simply something that, I hit fifth circle, now I have the ability to summon spirits and consequently bring a whole bunch of new options to bear onto situations.
But not treat them like the next Kleenex out of the Kleenex box and just grab one, toss it away, grab one, toss it away, grab one, toss it away. No, I think you've and the team have broadened the possible uses for spirits throughout all of the 4th edition, as far as what they can be used for, what they cannot be used for, and exactly how to interact with them. Mm-hmm. So I think we can, get down to brass tacks.
Yeah, so we kind of talked about that with ally spirits, like how you end up with, like, you've got your guardian spirit and your bone spirits and other things like that. And the Game Master is encouraged to come up with their own examples of things that they could have spirits kind of connected to. Generally speaking, spirits, the lower the spirit's strength rating, which is kind of just a measure of their relative power, the simpler and more basic they are in terms of their personality and motivations, and this is true for ally spirits as well as for elementals and beast spirits, is that in some ways the lower strength ratings are a lot more archetypal or iconic in terms of, like, if you were to say a strength rating 1 cat spirit is going to behave so much more ideally in sort of the platonic sense as a cat. As opposed to a strength 8 cat spirit, which will still be very cat-like, but will be much more developed in terms of a personality and goals and things like that.
Yeah, the stereotype is more 1, maybe 2, but as they get more powerful, they're going to have more nuance and personality, for lack of a better term, personality behind them.
Yeah, they're still going to be spirits. They're still going to have their own goals and objectives that might be inscrutable or alien to normal name givers.
There's still a sentience in there, so they're going to have something to bring forward.
Right, but they don't necessarily need to make sense in a strictly logical notion all the time.
No, they're more of an ethereal thing, so they may not be able to draw a straight line between their motivations, but they're going to wind their way to get there eventually. You'll get there, probably. So let's break down just alphabetically, because that's the easiest way to do it. Is the way it is in the book. Ally spirits, they're not tied to the elemental plane. Those are elemental spirits. So these are ally spirits. Nethermancers mostly get to be in touch with them. It's uncommon that they are the ghosts or spirits of the deceased, but it's possible. But more common is that they're native astral spirits, mostly benign. Some are indifferent, some are malevolent. You're going to have a range in there. But that's the general basis of an ally spirit. feel free to flesh that out.
Yeah, the way that I generally conceive of it, and this is kind of presented in that chapter, is that ally spirits are the spirits of man. These are the spirits that have a connection to name givers in some sense, and that they are spirits of cities and towns and civilization and things that are connected to people. Although you can absolutely have ally spirits that are just weird astral creatures of some sort. If you've read, and you can have astral denizens as well that are not, strictly speaking, spirits.
Yeah.
You know, so it's more of that. There are not any strictly defined borders. Categorization of things is a little bit weird sometimes.
As usual.
As usual.
We're playing a game. So on to beast spirits, as you mentioned, for the shaman. And these are things that...
These are generally speaking spirits of the wild places, spirits of the forests and the plains and the mountains, and are generally connected with animals. That is the sort of spirits of nature, to kind of take the Shadowrun term.
Yeah.
In that they, regular ally spirits have their own independent existence as well, but there is this kind of connection to name givers. Beast spirits are kind of outside of that realm.
Yes.
That they are like in the sense that the astral is a reflection of the physical. Beast spirits are kind of the astral fauna and flora that reflect the flora, that reflect the fauna and whatnot of the physical world. And so there is that kind of connection.
Fair. It's like the Harry Potter, is it the Animagus I'm thinking of? Harry Potter's spirit was the stag.
Oh, the Patronus?
Thank you. Couldn't remember the right made-up word. Yes, the Patronus spirit for Harry Potter. His is the stag and so forth.
Well, so, honestly, lines. I mean, just first off, it is difficult to make a direct comparison there. Yeah. I would say that if you were trying to go with the Patronus as a spirit and trying to define it in Earthdawn terms, it could be either a beast or ally spirit, depending on what it is and its nature. But it's okay. I was just trying to draw a reference for anybody to have outside of the Shadowrun and Earthdawn thing. So just trying to weave a pop culture reference in there if I possibly could. So I may have failed. Who knows? On to elemental spirits, which of course the elementalist gets access to. And each one of those is of course tied to one of the 5 in Earthdawn, as you said, air, earth, fire, water, wood. And each one of those has a specific bent to themselves when they present themselves. They want to see their own element grow more. Right. And one of the things that we did, that is one aspect of them, and they certainly have a very strong connection and desire to see their element expand their influence because they really like it. They are very sort of single purpose or single natured in that regard and are not particularly fond of other elements. The amount to which they are depends on their relationship based on the litany of the elements, which we talked about way back with the Elementalist episode.
Totally.
But with each of the elemental spirit types that we have in the Game Master's Guide, we generally present one named spirit, which is a specific sort of high-powered spirit that you could bring into your game as an ally or adversary or other. And then we have a couple of different categories, like types of spirit. Like for the earth spirits, we've got gnomes and hasapics, right? Some of these derive their inspiration from like classic myth and legend. Others were just kind of, I think, made up. Morgan did a lot of the work on these, so there may be references that he's made that I've missed. But these are sort of generally, like, again, providing examples. And I think just for space, we ended up cutting like another couple of example spirit types for each of the elements from this that hopefully maybe someday, if we get a book that will have space for them, we'll see the light of day. But basically having examples of what you can do with a spirit, like the different types of different flavors and personalities of spirit that you might have associated with the different elements.
Totally. And then it would be fun. So the next one up is the fun one, because they're almost always portrayed as evil, and that is the Invae. And so they're the insect spirits, and their origins are, at the moment, still a little fuzzy and unknown, and I like that aspect of them.
Yeah, I mean, basically all we really need to know with regards to the Invae is that they come from some unspecified, distant netherworld, are able to cross over into our world when the magic level is at a certain point. They are, in a sense, a harbinger of the horrors. That is, they cross over a little bit sooner. But they are very strongly aligned, in a sense, with bugs. You know, anybody who has any familiarity with Shadowrun and the Universal Brotherhood and the insect spirits and their appearance and influence in that game, that's the Invae. The Invae are the bug spirits. We do not, like, first edition just had like a really basic stat block for Invae. Some previous editions went as far as having different stat blocks for different types of bug spirits.
Yes.
We provide just one example, having it be an ant spirit, which is kind of the most common type.
Mm-hmm.
But you could have, I don't necessarily see the need to have hugely divergent stat blocks for the various insect spirit types. I mean, obviously, if you're going to go with beetle instead of ant, they might have a little bit of a higher physical armor or something along those lines. But, you know, really what you're looking at is the kind of template for Invae is that they actually possess name givers and transform them or convert them to being members of the hive. And the idea is basically that they just are looking to grow and expand the hive. And they are not, like, that causes problems with people because they take over people and like infiltrate them and whatnot as a result, but they are not predators in the way that the horrors are when it comes to name givers. And horrors are not...
No, the Invae just need a host body.
Yeah, horrors are not spirits in the way that we are talking about them here. They are astral entities, but they follow their own rules. And therefore, the stuff that we're talking about here with regards to spirits does not really apply to them.
No, the Invae just need a host body, which the horrors do not. But the Invae are almost never named, but they are mostly crossing over to increase their own population size. And so that's just the other creepy aspect of it is they're just going to take your body over and alter it to be more insect-like, which just go watch The Fly with Jeff Goldblum and Gene Davis and go from there. That'll be creepy. But
go check out, if you can get a hold of some of the classic, the early Shadowrun novels.
Oh, yes.
That have bug spirits featured in them. Check those out. Those explain what's going on with the bugs pretty well. The one I think I probably would recommend first is, I think, 2XS by Nigel Findlay is a bug spirit book, and like one of the first ones, one of the earliest novels that kind of featured the bug spirits. And Nigel's books are great anyway. So if you have not checked that out, it is worthwhile. And
an episode of the Legends of Earth Dawn that you play in, I think it was 32, 33, somewhere called In What, is the Invae spirits, and one of them, Cliff, did a fantastic job portraying the game master character attacking a member of your party. So he did a masterful job bringing in the Invae in a way I've never seen before. So that's the Invae spirits there. So on to tasked spirits, Tasked, tasked spirits. These are usually drawn forth and given a purpose.
Yes. We mentioned earlier the orbiting spy talent summons a tasked spirit. It creates a spirit that serves a specific function, a specific purpose.
Yes.
The way that they work is pretty much defined by the spell or talent or power that calls them into being.
Yeah.
Those are in one sense those are a much sort of simpler, the spell or talent includes within it sort of the summoning, such as it is, to call that specific spirit into being, and is only able to do that specific task.
Those are fun. So we mentioned strength rating a little bit earlier, so let's talk about the mechanics of that real quick. A strength rating of a spirit does not refer to their strength attribute.
Right. The strength rating is basically just a general guideline for how relatively powerful a spirit is compared to other spirits.
Yeah.
It is similar. You can kind of think of it in some ways as similar to like an adept's circle, and the stat blocks kind of break them down into the same like sort of novice, journeyman, whatever tiers, is that kind of strength rating 1 to 4 spirits are all kind of built off of the same stat block. But basically what happens is that the strength rating is applied as a modifier to various game statistics that they have.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a strength rating 4 spirit will have a higher mystic defense generally than a strength rating 2 spirit and things like that. So the strength rating is a sort of measure of relative power. And any time you're looking at a kind of basic spirit stat block and you see SR, it's referring to that strength rating, which you determine at the time that the spirit is created, and determines basically a lot of their numerical game statistics as well as the number and proficiency of powers that they have access to.
So any strength rating above an 8, actually 8 or above, is usually a named spirit.
Yes.
And then anything, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so spirits are not name givers. They don't really have any way of naming themselves or naming each other. Generally, spirits that have any spirit can be given a name by their summoner or by an ally or whatever that is working with them. That increases their power. Spirits actually like getting names because it makes it more difficult for them to be summoned or controlled. Because if a spirit has a name, that is a capital N, like a so-called true name, then in order to summon it, you need to know that name. And so frequently, it was not uncommon, especially before the Scourge, for elementalists or nethermancers to have a spirit that they frequently worked with to name it so that, one, it gives them a little bit more power over the spirit, but it also prevents their rivals from getting control over it if they keep that name secret. It is something that kind of plays in with traditional ideas of names and power and things like that. So that kind of plays into that theme. But generally speaking, any really, really powerful spirits typically will have a name, whether that's because they got it as a result, like any kind of pattern, a spirit gets a name, it might develop a true pattern and have a name as a result of its interactions with magic. And so a spirit that does a lot of stuff in the world, interacting with other magical patterns and so forth, could potentially, if it gets powerful enough, develop a name of its own and therefore be a very powerful entity.
And that'll be nice. Because rating 13 and above is listed as a great form spirit.
Yes. At that point, like we don't provide even like basic template stat blocks for spirits that powerful. Basically, these are like, they are incredibly rare, incredibly powerful, and you should, like, using the templates that exist already, you can kind of look at that and go, and it's that, but even more. These are very powerful entities and very difficult to deal with, and almost universally have true names that go along with them.
Absolutely. So we've covered our first half an hour on the kinds of spirits. I did take a look and I did do a mechanical breakdown. There's about 24 powers that spirits can have, and plus they have access to spells and they have access to talents. So there are all the spirits possible: air, earth, fire, water, wood, Invae, and ally spirits, and then all of the powers. So there's 6 powers that anybody can have. There's 19 powers that air spirits can have, 17 powers that earth spirits can have, 19 that fire spirits can have, 20 that water spirits can have, 18 that wood spirits can have, 8 for the Invae, and 13 for ally spirits. So there's a bunch of things there is a lot of potential.
Yeah, I mean, setting aside the fact that spirits can have access to spells and talents, which increases that even more. Yeah. There is incredible variety that is possible with spirits, and I would encourage game masters who are looking to bring spirits into their game a little bit more to flesh them out more, whether that is as summoned entities or just encounters, NPCs and so forth that show up in the game.
Absolutely.
Take advantage of that variety, just as there are scores and scores of ways that individual name givers can be, and the personalities and goals and temperaments and whatever that they can have. The same can hold true for spirits.
Yes. So the variety
they really should be characters.
Agreed. The variety, depth, and breadth of the character the game master can bring forth in any of those spirits is just astounding. So, how about we talk about how to get a hold of them? So we can spend the last half of this podcast talking about summoning.
Yes. So, tasked spirits are easy to summon. You just use the spell or talent or whatever that calls them into being, and you follow the rules for it. Those are quick, usually taking, a couple of rounds or, a round or 2 or 3, depending on the particular talent or spell that's being used. So you can call them up quickly to do the job that they're supposed to do, and they're pretty straightforward. The sort of slightly weird one is the Bone Circle spell, which is it's a spell that summons a tasked spirit, and that bone spirit has a sort of full stat block that you would create based on its strength rating at the time the circle is created. But most other spirits will have a specific task, a specific thing that they are doing, especially when you start looking at the mantle spells for elementalists or aspect spells for nethermancers, where you are basically summoning a specific spirit type that bonds or possesses, in a sense, a person and grants them bonuses at the cost of needing to behave certain ways in association with the spirit's nature. So those are all pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
The more general aspect of summoning, this is the one where you are looking to bring a spirit into the world to do some task for you, sort of more generally, is a ritual process. As written in the rule book, it is a 30-minute ritual in order to summon and deal with the spirit and, get it to agree to do the thing. But basically, it is intentionally designed to not be something that you can whistle up in the middle of a combat. You can certainly, if you have time to prepare, summon a spirit beforehand that will, the task that it will do for you will, be to help you in combat. But it is not something that you can just necessarily call up on the spur of the moment, intentionally so. Because some of the things that we had said in past episodes when we were talking about Beastmasters with the animal companions and the hazards that they can pose in terms of overshadowing a group or the force multiplication that they can bring to bear on a situation, holds even more truly for spirits, because spirits have potentially access to talents and spells and any other abilities
and powers
that, if not handled carefully, a smart character built for summoning can basically summon a spirit to take care of anything that needs doing. And the danger that poses in overshadowing other characters or dominating the game in a way is something that again, the summoning rules are designed in a way to try and mitigate that when possible. The process is kind of a multiple step process for summoning. You have the actual summon talent itself, where you are making a test against the mystic defense of the spirit that you are calling on. If you are looking to have specific powers or abilities that the spirit has, that increases the difficulty number for that, right? Each specific power that you want to have increases the difficulty by +2. The example that is actually in the book, at least in the original printing, has the numbers wrong.
Oh, fair.
The example in the player's guide is talking about, if you are summoning a strength rating 4 ally spirit and you want it to have 2 specific powers, it gives what the difficulty number is. That target number is wrong because it's not based off of the correct base mystic defense for the spirit.
Fair.
Just keep that in mind.
Covering the errata.
And so for each success on the spellcasting test, the spirit will stay around for 1 hour.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is from the end of the actual ritual. So if it takes you 30 minutes to kind of do the whole summoning, that hour clock starts when that period ends. You don't lose the first 20 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever because you have to negotiate with the spirit before that time starts.
You have a whole new hour.
And then
this is when you use your spirit talk inter-elemental tongues to communicate with that.
Right. That's
spirit.
The next step. Once you have actually called the spirit from astral space or from the nether realms to your location, you then need to actually negotiate the task that is being done. And is this that elemental tongues and or spirit talk come into play.
Yeah.
Where you basically are talking with the spirit. And if you want to just do it as a simple, like, roll the dice and see what the results are, that's fine. I would perhaps encourage game masters to use this opportunity to give the spirits personality, and to perhaps have recurring spirits that might be called back multiple times if the summoner is kind of looking to do similar things with them, and develop that relationship and develop the spirit as a companion or ally in a sense.
Yeah. And a good place to use your interaction tables that we talked about a few podcasts ago.
Yeah. But basically the result of the interaction test, that spirit talk or elemental tongues test, determines how many of their powers and abilities, or which powers and abilities the spirit agrees to use in pursuit of the task that you have assigned it.
And then the third step.
Yeah.
And then the third step is the actual spirit doing what you want them to do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at that point, again, if you have summoned a spirit and it's hanging around for a couple of hours, it will kind of perform the task that it has agreed to within the time frame that it is there. And then when it's either when its task is completed or when the time, when the duration of the summoning runs out, then the spirit is free to go. And in most cases, the spirit will return to its native plane and you go from there. And at that point, the spirit just kind of acts like an animal companion or other sort of game master character and will kind of do what it does.
We mentioned kind of the limits on summoning. So the total spirit strength rank is greater or less than this summon talent rank. So if you've only got summon at like rank 3.
While it might be a little bit of work, it is possible to have a stable of lower strength rating spirits that you kind of have. Obviously, the drawback of that is that their step numbers, their powers are not as strong in order to do the thing they want to do. So if you are a Nethermancer with a summon rank of 6, you can have a total of 6 strength rating spirits, whether that is a single strength rating 6 or 2 3s or a 4 and a 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
It is possible to do that. And having a small number of lower strength spirits, because their mystic defenses are lower, you are likelier to get more successes and have them hanging around longer. Again, the ritual duration, the time that it takes to summon them does still make that a little bit more difficult. There are some aspects of the way that spirit rules in terms of summoning and whatnot kind of worked out that, I've looked back on and wondered if it, without going like whole hog in terms of, going the other direction, of maybe tweaking or improving, mainly with an eye towards how to improve like the interactions and the relationship between a summoner and their spirits, to encourage that to be a relationship that is developed in a similar way to Beastmasters and their animal companions or that sort of thing, to try and make the spirits characters and to have them be seen less as a resource that you whistle up to do a particular task and don't give them any thought beyond that. Because a lot of especially when it comes to elementalists and shaman to a certain extent, is the relationship with spirits and to treat them with respect and to see them as beings with their own right to exist. Nethermancers, don't quite have that focus with ally spirits, but it is absolutely, the sample Nethermancer karma ritual involves the Nethermancer sitting down and having tea and chat with a spirit. So it absolutely is something that is present there within the fiction of the setting. The mechanics, especially in earlier editions, like spirits weren't, like the rules for spirits weren't even really introduced in terms of like what spirit stats and stuff were until Magicka Manual of Mystic Secrets, which was, a couple of years into production, despite the fact that you have elementalists and Nethermancers that have talents that deal and interact with spirits.
Exactly. Tell me tell everybody else how the contest of wills might come into play.
So if things go badly when you are summoning a spirit or trying to get a spirit to do something, and rather than negotiating and building a good relationship and handling those positive interactions, you
Trading
can
favors.
try and force it to do what you want. And this is basically a willpower contest.
Yeah.
So the summoner and the spirit each make a willpower test. They may spend a point of karma on the test if they wish. Whoever rolls higher wins the contest. If the summoner wins, then the spirit does what they want. If the spirit wins, then the spirit does not have to obey. If they tie, it's a push result and they can continue the contest of wills.
Yes.
If the spirit wins, they may try an additional contest of... The spirit is still summoned and sort of still bound at that point, but the spirit could make a second contest of wills to break free. And if it breaks free, it is able to go and do whatever it wants. And this could include attacking the summoner. It could be going off to, wherever and whatnot. At that point, it is no longer bound or subject to the restrictions of summoning.
Yeah.
Generally, a contest of wills is not a great thing. It's generally going to upset the spirit, but it is a lot faster, than a negotiation or discussion would be to try and persuade them to do what you want them to do.
But it's not generally received as better.
There's quick and dirty.
Or the polite way of asking for help.
Well, and I was going to say, then the flip side of summoning is banishing.
Yes, I was just about to get there.
And that is basically an optional talent for Nethermancers and Elementalists. The banishing basically allows you to send a spirit back to its native realm, and you can use banish against spirits not of the type that you are familiar with. So a Nethermancer who can only summon ally spirits can use banish not only on ally spirits, but also on elementals or Invae or beast spirits.
Yeah.
The drawback is if it is not a spirit with which you are familiar, then it does take an extra success to do it.
Fair. But summon is a discipline talent for both. Is banish discipline, or is it optional? Because I forget.
Well, it is optional. It's an optional talent, but again, you can spend karma on it.
Yeah, fair. No, I was just making sure if it was determined you automatically have to take this, or if banish is, maybe I'll take banish because whatever.
Yeah, banish is optional in part because it is a lot more dependent on how populated spirits are going to be within the game. Fair. If you are playing a Nethermancer or Elementalist or Shaman, you have summon that allows you to bring these spirits into being. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Game Master is going to have you going up against free spirits or spirits that were summoned by another Elementalist or Nethermancer or whatever that you might need to get rid of.
Yeah.
One of the issues that kind of was in place, because first edition, a lot of the summoning related stuff was just half magic abilities. There was no actual summon talent. It was something that was introduced fairly early in later edition development. But summoning and banishing spirits was something that was introduced because those disciplines were initially built without full spirit rules, aside from the task spirits that you would get from talents or spells, that summoning and banishing all kind of relied around half magic, and rather than having their own dedicated talents or abilities on them.
Fair enough. So what are the dangers of summoning and banishing dependent upon region and or, explain to everybody, astral backlash?
There is, similar to raw magic, there is some danger involved in trying to summon or banish spirits in areas with a higher level of magical corruption. It's not as bad as raw magic in the sense that it does not draw horror attention and potentially leave you horror marked, but it is possible that if you are in a corrupted area and you fail the test, which is more likely if you are trying to summon something that is sort of at the upper end of your power limit.
Yeah.
That you can suffer damage similar to the damage that you would get to casting raw magic. And the amount of damage is dependent on the area, the category of area that you are in, as well as the strength rating of the spirit. The more powerful the spirit, the more it's going to hurt if you fail.
That just makes sense. So we've talked spirits, we've talked summoning. What else should we mention to the listeners? Players or game masters who either intend on getting a hold of them, now and incorporating them, or what the game masters can do to flesh them out and personalize them.
Look at the example spirits that are provided in the spirits chapter of the Game Master's Guide. Cool. Look at the different personalities and approaches that you can have for different spirit types, especially if you've got a nethermancer or an elementalist or a shaman in your group. They get access to the summon talent when they reach their journeyman circles, and at that point, you're gonna want, like, spirits are gonna come into play, generally speaking. You know, they've got a talent that they are going to need to advance for standard discipline advancement, so they're probably going to want to take advantage of it. Spirits can be incredibly useful because they have potentially access to so many different powers and abilities. It is possible, in much the same way that the fact that spellcasters in general have a whole lot of tools to bring to bear to solve various problems with their spells, spirits add another whole layer on top of that. But one of the things that I would recommend that you do, they don't get the ability to summon spirits until Journeyman. That gives you as the game master an opportunity to start introducing spirits earlier in the game, whether as companions to other spellcasters, shamans or nethermancers or whatever, or whether they are free spirits. Try and think of ways that you can introduce them into the game to start fleshing out the idea of them as beings, as intelligent, thinking,
sentient,
entities, so that when the time comes for your players to start using the summon talent to kind of start bringing that ability to bear, that the groundwork has already been laid for them to think of spirits as more than just a, oh, I can now bring this cannon to bear. I will have basically summon the most powerful spirit that I can to use this power when I know that we're going into a fight, so I can completely overpower the situation. Really, look at the similar kind of things and think about the same kind of things that you would with a Beastmaster Animal Companion or the mount for a cavalryman or any other kind of game master character that might be accompanying the group on their adventures, whether short-term or long-term, and just flesh them out and think of them as beings and thinking beings, and ways that you can use that to play into themes in the adventure potentially, or as adventure hooks and things like that, and how they might be used to cause and or solve problems.
Yeah, or if it's you need a foil for the next time your players are going down into a care, maybe have a wind spirit, hanging around still guarding the place because it's been summoned and kept there. I don't know. Ideas. Toss those around. So what about players? What should they expect to do? Since you've got another mancer yourself, have you used summon often or infrequently or?
So where the episodes are releasing right now.
Yes.
We are just now we're starting the sort of culmination of the long-term return to Synok to face the horror within story arc. The most recent episode that released as of our recording here tonight is Return to Synok, which is sort of the beginning of that arc, which is going to be several episodes worth.
Absolutely.
I did some planning, basically knowing that the bone circle spell, which allows me to bring a bone spirit into being, that I can then use the spell summon bone spirit, as long as the bone circle is within my range, that I can then bring that spirit to bear on a situation. That is one thing that the Nethermancer kind of has, that with prep, they can have that resource a little bit more ready to draw on than an Elementalist who doesn't have that same kind of necessarily relationship. I do plan in advance. I've got a bone spirit. I've got a stat block ready for a guardian spirit. If I figure that we're going to want one of those.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hadn't used them much as of the episodes that have come out so far. because it does require a little bit of advanced preparation, but a spirit does get used in this kind of campaign arc culmination coming up here over the course of the next several episodes.
Nice, which is the nice little tie-in with that podcast as well. So
what I would perhaps encourage players to do, and I didn't really do this quite so much with Virag just because of the infrequency with which we play and the that we haven't really had a chance to kind of develop that so much. But work with your game master to perhaps develop a spirit that you might work with frequently. Take a look at the spirit powers that are available to the spirits that are of the type that you can summon. Get an idea of what they are capable of doing. Keep in mind the other players in the group and look at developing the spirit and the character of the spirit as something else that is a relationship with the party, and try to avoid, if possible, ways of taking things that are going to overshadow the other players. Like, you don't need to worry about summoning an ally spirit with picklocks if you've got a thief in the group. You should let the thief handle that. That you should use the spirit, again, kind of thinking of it as almost like a companion or ally or something like that would be coming along with you on adventures, just one that is not necessarily always there.
Yeah. When you need to call because you have to take 30 minutes to, get them on the phone.
Yeah.
Things like that. So, oddball, off the wall question for you, and this is a surprise to you because I thought about it while we were talking about it. Is the Sorcerer's Apprentice from Fantasia conjuring a tasked wood spirit to fill the water in the well for him? That sounds like a perfect example.
Yeah. Sure. That seems like that could be one way to read that situation.
Yeah. I was just like, that actually seems like a reference.
Yeah. So. The sort of follow-up consequences of that with the army of water carrying brooms is a little bit much. But yeah.
Just the initial thought. He summons a wood spirit, tasks it with filling the well for him. It goes horribly awry, but that's a contest of wills eventually. The axe is the deciding factor, is the negotiation period where he fails miserably. Had to add some levity to the whole spirit conversation. Any more examples that you can think of, pop culture, books, movies, anything like that you can think of that might involve spirits? I've got a trilogy of books my wife has read from Catherine Arden called the Winter Night Trilogy, and she based it on old Russian folklore about the same thing. Each residence or each building had its own spirit that inhabited it and so forth. And if you didn't appease that spirit, then it would do bad things for you in the coming future and so forth and so on. So she wrote this entire trilogy using a lot of those Russian folklore spirits in the novels. So that's an example I could think of.
Yeah, anybody who looks at the example spirits will definitely see that some inspiration was taken from classic folklore and legend. Totally. For that. And that is something that absolutely you can look to as a game master for fleshing out and developing your own spirit types and personalities and whatnot.
Fair. No worries.
So, no, absolutely. Like, looking at classic legend and folklore, you're less... Once you start getting into more late Middle Ages or Renaissance tales, when you start talking about things like where a lot more of the Christian dealing with spirits, where you start dealing with things like, like Faust, and you start dealing with demons and whatnot, is a lot less appropriate when it comes to spirits.
Fair.
But another thing, actually, another place that you might look for inspiration when it comes to spirits is to perhaps look at folkloric traditions from other areas. I know that, for example, Japanese and Chinese and a lot of Asian folklore can deal quite a bit with spirits that are a little bit different from what we're used to here in the Western traditions. But the idea of kami or various other, and that might not have been the proper term. Forgive me if I did have that wrong. But looking at things like Spirited Away by Miyazaki, a fantastic film.
Yes.
Looking into some traditions that might not be as familiar is a place that you could draw inspiration from.
Yeah. Nice reference there. So, any final thoughts we didn't cover about your initial wanting to talk about spirits and or summoning?
No, I think probably if nothing else, the biggest takeaway that I would want people to have from this is to look at spirits as characters, to look at spirits as beings with their own goals and desires, and how you can use that as a game master either to be a source of story hooks or complications or whatever.
Information gathering.
And also to try and have it be so that your players who do have access to summoning spirits are not necessarily just looking at them as a stat block to be called up and disposed of.
Yeah.
I think that potentially does them a disservice and runs the risk of, if you're looking at just the numbers, overshadowing the other players in the group and having those things be potentially difficult for a game's longevity. But also just missing out on the opportunity to do kind of strange, offbeat world-building setting development.
What do you think about the idea of having a spirit be how you find the answer to a key knowledge for a magic item?
Oh, absolutely. There are several magic items that involve spirits being bound to them, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Night Scar being one that comes immediately to mind, where it's got a spirit that is not particularly happy to be bound, and you kind of need to fight with it every time you want it to use its powers. But yeah, having spirits, particularly older, more powerful spirits, as the source of information or key knowledges, particularly if the spirit is somehow connected to the history of the item or had some kind of relationship with the former owner or anything like that. Those are absolutely great ways that you might be able to bring spirits into a story arc or something like that for a campaign.
Fair. I just thought that the original Star Wars trilogy had an ally spirit in Obi-Wan Kenobi's Force Ghost.
In a sense, yeah.
So for a pop culture reference right there. So other than that, we can beat this dead horse as long as we want to, but I think we've kind of run the gamut.
Well, then we can just call its ghost up afterwards.
Exactly. We'll summon its ghost. Episode 44. So, Josh, thank you for all the insight into ghosts, spirits, allies, Invae, everybody else. I think we've got the basis for a number of questions coming our way.
Yes,
so if you have any questions,
those questions,
hit us with the email.
EDSGpodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to, and we'll hear from you. Feel free to follow us on other social media sites and various things that we talk about every week. You can find the links to those in the show notes.
Yes.
All the rest of that.
So, until then, folks, it is time for you to go summon your own legendary spirit.
Good night, everybody.